Hello, art students. I realize this is a little bit late in the game and I apologize for that, but I want to add a little bit more clarity to the perspective ideas that we've been looking at. I've broken out of the storage cabinet this cube that I made last year for observational drawing purposes, and I want to use it to illustrate a few principles of perspective that I'm hoping will become more clear to you if you can see it kind of in 3 dimensions. I'm going to start with 1-point perspective, which means there is a single vanishing point, and all the lines that go away from you recede toward that vanishing point and converge upon it, which means they intersect or meet at that vanishing point. They go straight there, they do not pass go, they do not collect $200. If we're looking at this thing head on, and I kind of move it down like this, you can start to see that these edges here recede toward a vanishing point. And I'm going to move it around like this so that you can kind of see that. Obviously, if it's right in front of the camera like this, those interior dimensions would be hidden from you because this object is solid and its faces are made of paper, which you cannot see through. But if you could, you would see the interior lines kind of going through the middle toward the center vanishing point of that 1-point perspective. And again, the reason we have 1-point perspective is because the face of this object is facing you and all the lines recede toward a single vanishing point, which I'm hoping is being illustrated as I kind of move the box around like that. Oops, let's do it like this. So you can kind of see all those lines converging. The next thing I want to illustrate, of course, is 2-point perspective. And you get 2-point perspective when you're looking at the corner of a kind of rectangular object like this. And you can see the way that I'm holding it, the verticals are still vertical from your vantage point, but the lines that kind of go away from you, so like this point is closer to you than this point, and because of that, this line is going away from you, and it is converging toward a vanishing point. The same is true of this edge here, and this edge here. Meanwhile, you still have verticals that are absolute, which means that they are always vertical, they do not converge, they are more or less parallel in space. Okay? So I can kind of show you where those 2 vanishing points would be. If I just hold this still and I'm going to superimpose that. So the vanishing points would be kind of like off the sides of the screen here, but if you follow those edges, you can see where they are. Lastly, let's look at 3-point perspective. And 3-point perspective is going to happen when you see all 3 edges at a more extreme angle. You could do this view in 2-point perspective. Obviously, if you kind of move this down like that and you keep the verticals vertical, you have a 2-point perspective drawing with 3 sides of the object facing you, which is something that I asked for. But in 3-point perspective, what happens is those verticals also start to converge upon a vanishing point, which is, in this case, below the 2 vanishing points on the side. Or if I were to turn it like this, you can see that the vanishing point would be above your field of view, and those lines that recede away from you are converging upon it. Why? Because, hold on, I'm going to try to hold this steady for you, because this is closer to you than this. It's at an angle right now. I'm holding it so that this point is the closest point to you, and all other points are farther away, and therefore those lines lead away from you, and therefore those lines lead toward a vanishing point. Okay, so it's all about thinking about where your eyeball is, like here, and where everything else is in space. And as long as something is farther away from you than something else, it should lead toward a vanishing point, especially in 3-point perspective. Okay, so again, I just want to illustrate that real quick on paper. So with 1-point perspective, you have a vanishing point like this, and you would have an object facing you with all of its edges kind of going toward that vanishing point. as long as they're going away from you. And if they're not going away from you, they are parallel. They are either vertical or horizontal, or they could be at a diagonal. That's fine. Like, let me show you why. Just use the width of the ruler here. So it could be going like this. And note how I connect the corner to the vanishing point each and every time. So there's another one. And those are all obeying 1 point perspective. So I'm going to write a number 1 in them. Meanwhile, with 2 point perspective, you can add a second vanishing point, and that's really important. And now you have lines that recede toward those vanishing points from 2 angles. And let's go ahead and put it above the horizon line here, just like that. So because this face is going to go that way and this face is going to go that way, these lines are going to recede toward their respective vanishing points. So I'm just lining it up with the vanishing point. I'm drawing a line. I'm going to where it intersects the verticals, and I'm drawing the other vanishing point, the other receding line down. And now I have the faces of the object. And now I can, because this is above that horizon line, that horizontal line between the vanishing points, I can actually go and find where the bottom of this object is. So again, because this face goes that way away from you, it goes toward this vanishing point. The opposite face is going to be parallel to it, so it goes toward the same vanishing point. And now I can connect this one to this corner right here. And there's our object. The reason I don't like the term horizon line in any perspective drawing is because you could take 2 point perspective and do it vertically, like this, and you would still get the same idea. So let's look at another 2 point perspective object. This time I'm going to make it sort of behind this one that I just drew. And if you want to make the object slightly more complicated, you can always add or carve out from that initial box that you drew. And I will show you how to do that in a moment. So we're drawing boxes. And then let's say I want this to be kind of like a block letter C. I can carve out that middle section of the C. Just like this. And then I can remember now I've created an undercut to it that I have to define. So that would come back toward here, and this would come back toward here. And then I would take my handy-dandy eraser and I would erase that little line so that it's absolutely clear that this is a more complex polygon, and that's what I was looking for in that second assignment. So there's a good example of 2 point perspective done vertically, which is the reason I don't like to use the term horizon line or horizontal line in perspective drawings. It is just a line that connects the vanishing points that represents a plane that you can't really see because it's at eye level, okay? Sort of like if I hold the ruler like this, you can see the top of it, but the closer it gets to your eye level, suddenly you can't see the top of it, you only see the edge, and that's because the top of it is on the same level, the same line as your various vanishing points that you would be seeing. Vanishing points are infinite, they're completely dependent on where you're looking, and again, that's because perspective drawing has to do with your point of view and the space that you're witnessing and the creation of 3 dimensions by that phenomenon. So now let's add a third vanishing point. So let's go ahead and do the drawing over here. I've created 2 vanishing points here, so that starts with my first 2 perspective points. I'm putting a third vanishing point down here, and what's going to happen is, let's label this one 2, 2. That's 2 point perspective. 3 point perspective, I'm going to use this vanishing point, and this vanishing point. Let's create a box in 3 point perspective. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create a stack of rectangular prisms so that you can kind of see them from all angles. So let's see. I'm going to go ahead and erase this. Let's do one more at the top. So I'm going to continue this line so I get its edge. Just like that. So again, all these lines are going toward this vanishing point. This line is going to go there like that. Let's give them all edges. And I'm using these intersection points as my connector area. Just like that. Because you have to think like, okay, so here's the face of this object. Where does this line come out from? Well, obviously from the corner. So that's where I want to connect it to. Now I've got this corner and this corner. I want to make this kind of it's going to look sort of like a pat of butter in there, nestled underneath the other object. See that? So it starts to kind of look like it's behind this one. This one, meanwhile, is going to have a very shallow center plane, and that's kind of like how I showed you earlier with the ruler. That's because it's almost at eye level. So we don't see a whole lot of that face of the rectangular prism there. Going from this corner now to that vanishing point. And now I'm going to make this one go to here. Now I've created a corner that's not in line with the other ones, so this line has to go toward this vanishing point down here. So I'm going to put my pencil here so I can easily line up my ruler. Just like that. Now I've created that line. While I'm down here, I'm going to do the same thing for this corner right there. Look at that. Now I've got an intersection point here and this vanishing point. I'm going to top it off. So you can see this is in 3-point perspective. Let's review. 1-point perspective is going toward a single vanishing point. 2-point perspective is going towards 2 vanishing points. And 3-point perspective is going towards 3 vanishing points. And the whole time we are bearing in mind which part of the object is supposed to be close to us, which part is supposed to be far away. We're able to carve out chunks of those objects to create more complex shapes. And when we do that, we remember that we're creating more corners that will need to be connected to vanishing points if they expose the face of an object. Okay? So once again, that is the whole review of our perspective unit. The last thing I'm asking you to do is to take these principles and apply them to something that you're actually looking at in real life. Best of luck. Can't wait to see what you draw.